Thank you. Good night. Thank you very much for your patience. John Wolff, very kindly, for those who are not here on a Thursday, he's affectionately known as Millimetre Perfect or Dennis Kimetti, because everything he makes in terms of toys is going to be absolutely just right. I mean, anyone who comes up with the design of a toy, and John says, I'm not even interested in the plans, I've never seen a plan yet that's right. And John actually self-destructs the plan and proves the plan wrong all the time, and he actually makes up the models for the other ones on a Thursday to follow. He very kindly offered late last year to give a demonstration of the restoration of organs/organettes, and he's ably assisted this evening by his lovely daughter Anna. And for those who don't know, and we've received their permission, this is going to be streamed live and be put on Facebook pages, we understand. So if you're interested in getting all tune into our Facebook, so I'll hand over to you, John, and to Anna. Thank you very much.
All right. I've been working with pianos and pianolas and reed organs, organettes and all sorts of mechanically operated musical gadgets for about 40 odd years. I don't claim to be an expert on it, but I want to tell you a bit about some of the work that I've been doing. There's a very long history to these things. It goes back an awful long time, but that's a topic for another time. Tonight we're going to go back to 1870, 1880. So get your mind around, it's 1880, right? For a start, there's no internet, right? There's no radio and TV, there's no motor cars, there's not even an electric light. We would have come here tonight by horse and cart, or walked, if we were here at all. We'd be sitting under Kero lamps or maybe gas light. We might have a steam engine out the back to drive the workshop, if we were lucky, but more than likely we'd all be in here working with hand tools. If you wanted music, well, you went to the music hall or the theatre, if you could afford it, if there was one in your town. You had your daughter learn the piano, and that's a waste of time because she doesn't play it anymore. Or the violin. You listened to the organ grinder who would come around the streets and play music for you. If you're out in the country, you had to wait for the travelling vaudeville shows to come to town, which they did from time to time. Or you listened to the reed organ in the church, or you listened to the town band. A lot of people in those days were actually in the town bands because it was the only way they were going to get music. If you were very rich, you might have had a music box. And the music boxes are a big grown-up version of the little toy music boxes that we still have today. But they were for the very rich. And then in the 1870s, along came the little organette, right? This little fella. It's a little miniature tabletop reed organ. About so big, and it plays recorded music that's recorded as a pattern of holes in a roll of paper. It's a roll of paper. This is an original. This is made about 1880. Right? And these rolls are still playable after 140 years. You come back in 140 years and try and play a CD and see how far you get. It isn't going to work. But paper and wood, no trouble at all. It's exactly the same technology, holes in paper, that we used 50 years ago to store computer programs on paper tape. It's the same thing that Jacquard used in 1800 to store the programs for his weaving looms. Right? Very old technology, and this was when about 1870, late 1870s, it became available in these little instruments. I'll put that one aside and we'll grab the next one. This is a similar sort of thing, and we'll give you a demo. This is an American Civil War tune from the 1860s, marching through Georgia. The only catch is you've got to rewind it by hand. So it mightn't sound like much today, but those little instruments are a very important part of history because that was the absolute first thing that was available for mass distribution of recorded music to the general public. It was the absolute very first thing that ordinary people could afford for recorded music at home. In 1880, the invention of these little things and putting them on the mass market was as big a change as the coming of television or the coming of the internet in our time. It was the absolute latest technology. In fact, it was pretty much the only home technology. George Eastman had invented film by then, but he hadn't made the Kodak camera. Edison was still working on his phonograph. He was still trying to work out how to get the air out of his light globes. There wasn't any of that. Radio broadcasting, well, it was still 40 years away. These little things were pretty much the wonder of the age, and people found the money for them. They sold for $5 for these little fellas in about 1880. It was about a week's wages at the time. Well over $500 in today's money. But if you look at the number of kids these days who've got $1,000 fancy phones and iPads and Lord knows what, people found the money for it. So how does it work? It works on vacuum by sucking air through little reeds made of brass. There's a little reed, just a little brass frame with a tiny little tongue in it. And you suck air through it and it speaks. Reeds don't care whether you suck or blow. If you play the mouth organ, well, you've got to do both, right? It just turns out that it's much easier to make suction bellows than it is to make pressure bellows. The first organettes operated on pressure, just the same as pipe organs have done for thousands of years, hundreds of years anyway. The Americans figured out that it was much simpler to make the suction bellows, and the instruments have worked on suction ever since. So underneath, there are 4 little bellows that pump the air as we turn the handle, right? So that's the pumping action, and in the middle there's a big spring-loaded reservoir which equalises the pressure and evens it out. And that just produces a constant suction. Up the top here there's a soundboard. It's hollow underneath, so that acts like a wind chest, and that constant suction appears across the slot here. Also on the crankshaft there's a couple of rubber rollers which are what pull the paper through. So that's the bottom of the machine. In the top of the machine there's another little roller that sits over the feed roller, and the reeds sit in this little block of wood here. Right? It's open at the front and holes in the bottom there, and that sits over the slot. The paper goes between the slot and the reeds and blocks the path. When a hole comes along, the air can be sucked down through the hole, through the reed, and you get the sound. The reed block is really just a sort of a motorised mouth organ. So that's each one reed. So that's how it works. Restoration of something like that. Can you get a little one on the end there, Annie? And I'll drop you for that one. This is sort of the condition you might find one in. It's pretty filthy. It's this is actually a very early one. It's a very simple design. It doesn't have any of the nice top on it that one has. The top is just completely hollow. It's in pretty crappy condition. The handle obviously is not original. The rubber feed rollers have disintegrated. The bellows underneath, this is a different arrangement. There are 3 pumping bellows. The leather flap valves, which are the valves that control the air movement, they've had it, of course. The bellows cloth has had it. The reservoir is missing its spring. There's a bit of work to do in repairing a thing like that. It's pretty straightforward. They're simple instruments, but they are well over 100 years old and they need a bit of respect, I think. Bellows are just boards, 2 boards. There's a cloth or leather hinge up one end. They're hinged together like so and covered with bellows cloth. Now, bellows cloth, here's some samples of some of the things that we would use in covering bellows of various sorts. I'll pass these around. The top one's what we call zephyr skin. It's very thin. It's actually sheep intestine. Animal parts were used a lot in these sorts of things. Same as violin strings were made of catgut, which was really the cat's gut dried out and stretched. So there's that. There are a couple of different thicknesses of very thin leather and several sorts of bellows cloth, which is basically just a sheet of cloth covered with a layer of rubber and sometimes another sheet of cloth over the top. And it can be made quite thin. This is one which has got black on one side, red on the other side and rubber in between. The last time I had to buy a sheet of that, it cost nearly $200 a yard. So it's pretty expensive stuff. Got to pass that down. But it's basically just rubberised cloth. So we have to remove the bellows from here. They're glued on, and they're all glued on with hot glue so that it can be got apart without too much trouble. We strip off all the old glue, we recover the things, we have to make new flap valves. There's 2 sets of valves. There's the one on the outside here, and there's another set of valves inside those bellows. And once you put the thing together, those inside valves are gone forever until next time the thing has to be taken apart. So you've got to get them right. The reeds themselves are usually pretty good. They're very stable, and once you clean them up and get all of the dirt out of them, they're usually pretty well in tune. They don't change very much. You may have to touch up the tuning a little bit. You rarely have to mess with the voicing of the reed. Voicing is there's a very, very slight curve in the end of that reed, and that alters the tone, the sort of tone that the thing makes. And you rarely have to mess with that. Then you've got the casework to do. This obviously needs a lot of cleaning. It doesn't need any repairs to the casework that I can see. This fellow actually had been dropped at some stage, and there was a triangular or wedge-shaped piece missing off this edge, and I've had to replace that. And then you have to repolish the thing without wrecking the decorations and line work on the side. They were expensive things. I mean, they cost a week's wages, and most of them were very ornately decorated with these sorts of patterns. So that's 3 different sorts of little 14-note organettes. They play a standard, all those 3 instruments all play with standard 14-note roll. There were over 700 different sorts of organettes were made. A chap in England has compiled a book of them, and he's got 700, but they were made in the hundreds of thousands. And one of the very best, I think, was the Celestina, so we haven't a big one any. This is a much more substantial sort of instrument. It's got 20 notes instead of 14. It was made in the early 1880s, about 1883 these came along. The ones I've shown you there, the one that needs the restoration, that's a very early one, probably 1880, about 1882, probably about 1885 for the little one. Much more ornate casework, very elaborate decoration on it, if you have a good look at the decoration on this fellow. And these play a very compact little paper roll, like so, only about 5.5 inches across, and on a little wooden spool, so it's easily put in and replaced, and you wind it back onto the spool when you're finished. This is another one from the 1880s. Much smaller holes in it, because this instrument uses a valve mechanism. The holes in the paper don't have to operate the reeds directly. The holes in these just operate a valve mechanism internally, and the valves control the much larger flow of air into the reeds. So we'll have a listen to what it sounds like. This side. This is a reproduction I've made from a roll from the 1800s. There's a bit of a story to that one too. A chappie rang me up one day and said, I've been repairing or restoring a Celestina organette and I'm having a bit of trouble with it. Can I bring it round? Can you have a look at it for me? And I said, all right, bring it round. He brought it round and it didn't make a sound at all. And it turned out the guy had gone and he bought some bellows cloth and he bought the leather for the innards of it, and he'd done it all up, and he was a bit disappointed that it was completely and totally silent. And he basically had enough of it and said, I don't want to buy it. Well, I didn't, because I had 2 of them already. And anyway, I gave him a trade-in. I swapped him for something else. And I think when I got down to overhauling that one, the best you could say was he wasted some good materials. That totally complete stuff that he'd made of it. All right, how does this work? Rather than trying to take that one apart, I've got another one, which is already apart. Once I get the screws out. Right, it's in 2 parts, and it's just like the other one. In the bottom section, there are 3 pumping bellows, right, operated by the crankshaft, and there's a big reservoir. It's much larger than the little organettes, these things take a lot of air. This is just a little frame that I've made to sit the thing in while I'm working on it, right? Because otherwise there's a valve mechanism on the bottom there, a relief valve, and we don't want that sitting on the ground. So that's the bottom action, and that's the whole purpose of that, is to supply the suction up into the wind chest, which sits up here. That's all there is to see in the bottom. Except I should mention, in the reservoir there are 2 springs. These are the sorts of springs that are in the reservoir. 8 pound it takes to compress that, and there are 2 of them in there. I'll pass it around, you can have a look at the, it's a dangerous sort of thing. Don't try and push it shut, because if it gets away from you, it'll slash your wrists. That's it. And even with 2 8-pound springs in there, the operating pressure is only about 3 inches of water. It's 1/8 of a pound per square inch. Right? It is the actual air pressure that the thing works on. Okay, in the top section, in the front here, is where the reeds live. Right, so there's 20 reeds set in there, in the back, in a little block, just like they mounted in the other one. Little slot in the front there. Underneath the reeds, there's 20 little wooden pallet valves, leather facing on the bottom of them, and they block the air from coming in through the reed. There's a spring on each one, the spring holds the valve shut. If you take one of these out, you can see underneath there's a little hole there that goes through to the reed. You can see the end of the reed in through that hole. Pallet valve, just a piece of wood with a bit of leather facing on it. Okay. To operate the valve, there's a tiny little pneumatic motor, which is just a little tiny bellows. It's about 1/2 inch wide and about 3 inches long. Right? And there's 20 of those in a row down there. And when they expand, they lift the back of the pallet valve, and that lets the air come in through the slot and through the reed, and that's what makes the sound. On the top, we have what are called the tracker bar. This is what reads the information from the roll, and there are channels down through the wood from each note here down to the corresponding pneumatic motor underneath. Right? Also up the top here, there's the crankshaft that pumps the bellows, and the drive mechanism for the roll, and the rewind mechanism. So that's the top section and the bottom section.
Holes, do they allow the air to come up after the sound or before?
No, that's the air. It sucks in. These work on suction. Right? The pipe organs work on pressure. You need pressure to blow, but it's easy because the reason it's easier to make suction bellows is that if you make a pressure bellows, you compress it, it's only made of cloth, it's just going to blow out like a balloon, right? And it won't pump at all. You have to put stiffeners inside of them, and that's a tricky business.
Those holes, they're drilled on different angle diagonals, are they?
Yeah, we shall get to that in a moment. The little bellows. I shall pass some of these around here to look at. You can take them out of there and have a look at them. There's a lot of experiments being made, and they're mostly the failures. Okay, so that's sort of how it works. There's a very delicate balance between the suction that you've got in here, the pressure of the air trying to push the pallet valve open against the spring, the amount of oomph you can get out of this tiny little pneumatic motor, When you get it right, the thing works nicely. When you get it wrong, as the rebuilder of this did, it doesn't work at all, and it can be quite a problem. There's a bit of a story to this instrument too. I got a phone call one night and a familiar voice says to me, "John, you like a bit of a challenge, don't you?" Well, what can you say? It was a fellow by the name of Frank Friedman, who was a well-known collector around Melbourne of radios and musical things. And Frank used to get a lot of tips from the auctioneers before things ever saw the light of day. And he got a tip about a fellow who found a Celestina organette. So Frank had a look, and he decided it was not for him, and he rang me. So I went and had a look, and I shall pass around some photos of what I found. This thing had been under a house for at least 50 years, uncovered. Well, it was completely covered in mud and leaves and God knows what. The joints in the case are all separated. The case had fallen apart completely. It was all in separate bits. Everything that was made of softwood, the borers had eaten it right through. And it was gone. The reeds were all there. The metalwork looked like it was restorable. It was pretty rusty, but it looked like it would go. You'll even find in the photographs there's the remains of a roll on it. When I got it, the roll had been in there and they put it away. And when I finally got round to transcribing the music off the roll, it was a couple of tunes from the Mikado, which was all the rage in 1885. I mean, Gilbert and Sullivan in the 1880s was the latest hit. And, you know, this would have been a treasured instrument in those days. But the family must have updated to a gramophone or a radio, and this thing got shoved under the house, and there it stayed. Until some idiot came along and thought he could restore it. Well, what you see here, this and this, is completely reconstructed from scratch. There are only about two original pieces of wood in it. One of them is the block that actually holds the reeds, which for some reason the borers didn't eat. And the pallet valves, there were no borers in those either for reasons that I don't understand. But everything else you see here I've made from scratch. It's a tricky sort of a thing to build. If you have a look at the underneath, you'll find, well, they're not just butt joints, they're all little tongue and groove type joints where I make the thing airtight to add a bit of strength to it. There's pumps and reservoirs, well, they're just bellows, right? Done plenty of those. Recovering the reservoir, well, it's got 16 pounds of spring inside it, but it's easy enough once you know how to do it. The little tiny pneumatic motors, well, I had to make a lot of experiments with those, different sorts of hinges, different sorts of covering. Even the originals used several different designs of those, so they weren't all the same. They went through a bit of a development process.
What is the pneumatic motor?
Those tiny little bellows, like about half an inch by 3 inches or so. And they just inflate and they push the pallet valve open. The trickiest part of all was making the tracker bar, which is this piece in the middle, which is really the key to the whole instrument. Now, here's the one that came out of the machine. And this is what takes the spacing at the bottom, which is about 5/8 of an inch to match the pneumatic motors inside the wind chest, and on the top it's a 1/4 inch spacing where it reads the roll. Now, you can probably see from there that this has got a few pinholes in it. And it really, to work, it has to be airtight, and it's got to be airtight between each of those channels. When I finally got the thing apart to see how it was actually made, right, it's saw cuts. It's not drilled holes. It's saw cuts from the top to the bottom. And this presented a bit of a challenge as to how I was going to make something like this. And eventually it dawned on me that all of these lines converge to a point up here somewhere, which is very convenient. So I was able to make a little jig which went in the triton with the saw overhead in the triton and a pivot point right under the saw. I put the old one on here and marked up on this piece that swivels exactly where the slots were to go. Then I put the new one on here, screwed it on, and could just tilt it around until it lined up with my reference mark at the back here, and just push the saw through. I made the thing way oversized so that it was up about this big, and then once I'd glued the cap on, or the cover onto it, and that's a bit of a challenge too, because you've got to make sure that this is absolutely airtight from one channel to the other. Once that cap went on, I was able to just slice bits off the top of it until I got down to that 1/4 inch spacing. Right? And that's how we got back to there. Then, to cap it all off, we had to make the cap, because those holes there are much bigger than are needed to read the roll. And if they're too big, that was one that I made as a tryout. That was my first tryout, where you've got your pivot point here, and it was all cut through and then cut down to size later. Pass that around if you want. And if you don't mind a bit of Bora dust, there's the original. And the last part of that was to make that little cap that goes at the top, which is 20 very precisely dimensioned rectangular holes. Yeah, rectangular holes. So that took a little while, but it came out all right in the end. That's a flat one. I sort of got rounded off a bit after. Yeah, square drill. That's made out of rock maple because it gets a bit of wear as the paper passes over the top. The mechanism is finished, it's playing well. I've left the screws out of it so that I could take it apart and demonstrate it. That's why I brought the other one to demonstrate tonight. The next job on this is the case restoration, and that's going to be a bit of a challenge. The wood's all there, but it needs a lot of refinishing. If anybody's got any ideas on how to redo the decorations and the line work on these things, I'd love to talk to you about it. All of this has been done at home, mostly using my old Triton saw, table saw. I've got a DeWalt thicknesser, which is an absolute godsend for making bits of exactly the right thickness to reproduce what is here. Lots of interlocking joints and bits that have to fit. The DeWalt's marvellous. My favourite tools are using on this sort of thing is an old number 7 hand plane and a good square. You can't beat them. It's all done with hot glue, as it was originally, and also so that my work can be taken apart again in 50 years' time when this is overdoing or doing over again. It's important to realise that we're never the owners of these things, we're just temporary custodians. They were here before I was, they'll still be here after I'm gone. I think we've got a responsibility to leave them as near to the original as we can and pass them on to the next custodians in at least as good a state as we found them.
Was there any one person who invented this machine?
No, they just developed over quite a while. Okay, that's all I want to talk about with that one. The last thing I want to talk about just briefly is that little guy over there. Right. Yeah, pass that around. This is a little 14-note pipe organ. I built the mechanism of this, and I made the music rolls about 6 or 7 years ago. I didn't build this little case, right, but I built everything that's inside it. And this sort of little organ is a descendant of some little pipe organs, or Organettes they were called, that were hand-built for the ladies of the aristocracy in the 1700s. This is something that goes back quite a long way. They weren't used to entertain the ladies, they were used to teach their canaries how to sing. I kid you not, the name Serenette comes from Serin, which is the French word for canary. And they played if you know the magic flute, they played the sorts of little tunes that Papageno the birdcatcher sang in the magic flute. This is interesting because the canaries, and hence the instruments, were a byproduct of the slave trade in the 1700s. The slave ships from England would head off down the coast of Africa. They'd collect their cargo from Nigeria or wherever. They'd head west past the Canary Islands, and it's a bit entertaining to imagine these slave traders out there with nets trying to catch canaries on their way past. But that's what they did. They'd head across to Jamaica, deliver the slaves to the plantations, and head back to Europe with the canaries, which were all the rage amongst the aristocracy. Well, I'll give you a demo on this little fellow. Your canary would have a lot of trouble with this tune. It's a bit more robust. It's from the right time though, it was written by Thomas Arne in 1743. So the story to this one, again, it's got a bit of a tale to it. I had a good friend by the name of Frank Pitt. If any of you are ever in the fire brigade here, you probably knew his son Russell. But Frank built 4 or 5 street organs of various styles about 30 years ago. And he built this little case, and he built some sort of organ inside it. Now, Frank was a bit of a, I suppose you'd say he was a cranky old bugger. Right? He liked making things, he liked fixing things, but he never ever kept them. And he must have got cranky with whatever it was he built in this case, because he'd stripped it all out and thrown it away. But for some reason, and I never got to the bottom of it, he kept this empty case in his shed for 30 years or more. And when he got to about 90, he was moving himself into a hostel, and he came round one day with a big bag under his arm, and he fished this empty case out, and he says, "John, do you reckon you could make something to go in this?" Well, coming from Frank, it was a challenge, and it was an endorsement at the same time, I think. So I got to thinking about it. I had been thinking about making a street organ for some time, a bigger organ that you could play outdoors. And I'd read a lot of books, and I'd even bought some plans. A wonderful set of plans here for a Frank organ. This organ was designed by a German engineer. He worked for Mercedes Trucks, and the plans were all written in German, and they were translated into English by a Dutchman who couldn't speak either language.
That's why they call it double Dutch.
It's a very interesting read, I tell you. Very interesting read. Anyway, based on all of that, I started thinking about what I was going to make. And to cut a long story short, I designed the insides of this instrument from scratch and built the whole thing in the space of about 12 months or so. I passed around some pictures there of what it is. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. You'll find it on my website. The link's in the newsletter, or if you just Google John Wolff Museum, you'll find all about it. On the website, there's also quite a few more pictures of the organettes, various sorts, and some other ones which I haven't shown you tonight. And there's also a bit about some work I've done on electronically scanning and reproducing these music rolls, both for these instruments and for this fellow and for the Celestinas. So have a look on the website if you're interested. I haven't actually built the street organ yet. I bought a professional one, which I play most Sundays up at Pupping Billy at Belgrave. Some of you have seen what I get up to up there, and anybody else is welcome to turn up and have a look. I have quite a few other self-playing instruments of various sorts. I'm always happy to talk about them with anyone who's interested. So bail me up any time. I'm usually here Monday morning or Thursday morning, and I'm happy to talk if you want to know more. If you've got any burning questions, speak up, but keep the time in mind. And please can I have all those bits and pieces back up the front before you leave?
Two questions. Did these come before the pianola or after? And the second question is, how do you cut your paper?
The short answer is I made a machine to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I built a punching machine about 20 years ago. I've made several hundred reproductions of these rolls, the Celestina rolls, and I've made the rolls for this little organ, and I made rolls for the street organ that I play. So I've been making rolls for quite a long time. When I first started, well, I should mention that too, it's an interesting aside. You might think that software piracy is something rather new, but when these came out in the 1880s, they were expensive, and so was the music. Probably cost $1 for that, which is getting very expensive. So people were tempted. It's only just a roll of paper with holes in it, so you could put it out over the top of another long sheet of paper, draw around it and cut it out. Well, when I first started making music rolls, I actually wrote a computer program to print it out rather than having to trace around it. And then I sat down with the X-Acto knife and a ruler to cut it out. And it took me 3 hours to cut a minute's worth of music. And I decided there was no percentage in that, but maybe in 1880 there was. The difficulty was finding a long roll of paper. So I have a roll here that's made of rubber band. Well, it looks to me like the roll of blind out of the kitchen. So somebody has drawn that out and cut it. And I've got another beauty here, probably made in the 1950s out of the seat of the F.J. Holden. But the funny thing is it actually plays.
Oh, what's that? That's vinyl.
Yeah, very heavy vinyl. Well, if you could make that for nothing, I suppose it was better than paying $100 for it, wasn't it?
Has anybody put value on any of your little machines?
Look, that value is not the point, it's the enjoyment of the music from long, long ago.
But they would be valued in wouldn't they?
Yes, they're not cheap.
I hope you didn't pay a fortune for the one that was under there.
No, I got that for a nominal fee, but I have put a bit of work into it, I tell you.
John, there's a different things making differences there.
The different
timbers used in making those?
Um,
Does it sound very?
a little bit, not a lot. Most of the one I've rebuilt here, most of that is simply made out of radiata pine, and it sounds just as good as the original one. No, not particularly yet. Often in the bellows and all, instead of the original softwood, I'll quite often use plywood, use hardwood marine pine, because it's just much easier to work with.
What about the tuning? Is that the size of the hole, or does that have that the air goes through? Or?
Well, tuning the pipes is a matter of adjusting the length of them. Like if you look in this fellow, you'll see that's what the stoppers to adjust the length of the pipe. That's how you tune them. The reeds are vibrating to raise the pitch of the reed. You have to actually scrape a little bit of brass off the tip of the vibrating tip, and it's just something that you do with a very sharp blade, just to very delicately scrape the reeds. You really have to do it because they're very stable. It's only when they start to fatigue and the pitch will drop remarkably because they lose their spring. And at that stage, you go and have a look on eBay, you buy an old reed organ for $2, and there's a supply of reeds.
John, are there any gears such in any of these machines?
Yes, if you have a look at the Celestina, that's got just two little gears in the drive mechanism. That's all. The others are just done with rubber rollers.
Right, yeah, as the tape goes, call it the tape goes through, it drives.
Yeah, it's just drawn through that by rubber rollers on the crankshaft. Yeah. Yeah, well that's all I got to talk about.
Oh, now these ones, they are by suction. Is that other one you showed there with the pipes, is that
The pipe organ operates on pressure.
Yeah, I thought it would be, yeah.
That's pressure, so you're going to blow through the pipes.
Yeah, I thought so.
So everything.
So it's a total different setup.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was very old, you said?
They have made organs like that with a pneumatic action since
Yeah.
about the 1890s.
Oh, okay.
All right? But that instrument, the innards of that I built about 6 or 7 years ago. The
Yeah.
box is about 30 years old.
Okay.
Just one more question. I was intrigued when you said you had difficulty